Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwan, and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today, we talk about the World Eaters. We're finally going to start off this lore series for this very requested Space Marine chapter. Now, if you guys have any requests or any suggestions as to what first founding chapter you guys would like to hear about next, please comment down below. Put suggestion followed by that chapter, because what we're doing is we're tallying up the chapter with the most votes, and those chapters get videos first. With that said, guys, let's get into 40 facts about the World Eaters. The World Eaters are one of the traitor legions of Chaos Space Marines who now inhabit the warp rift known as the Eye of Terror in the Imperium of Man Segmentum Obscuras. The World Eaters, originally known as the Warhounds, were also once the 12th Legion of the 21st founding Space Marine legions, and one of the first to betray the Emperor of Mankind for the service of Chaos and War Master Horus. The original 12th Legion, the Warhounds, wore blue-colored power armor with white on the shoulder plates and parts of the power pack. The Astartes of this legion often modified their armor by adding large spikes on the shoulder plates, not only to evoke fear, but also to turn their armor surface into a weapon in its own right. A brazen-colored helm would denote veteran status. The original 12th Legion badge of the Warhounds was that of a large red hound, centered on a field of white. This symbol was reminiscent of the epithet given to them by the Emperor himself, for the 12th Legion reminded him of the white warhounds that Yeshk people in the north of Terra once used. Of all the Space Marine legions created by the Emperor of Mankind during the first founding, none were so savage and dreaded as were the 12th. For while others, such as the Night Lords, could justly claim to have brought worlds into Imperial compliance through fear alone, and others, such as the White Scars and the Space Wolves, could descend without warning and leave a world burning in their wake, for the 12th to be assigned to a campaign meant only one thing for the enemy: extermination. Extermination not by virus bomb or atomic firestorm, but by chain axe and bolter. Worlds drowned one by one in the blood of their inhabitants. The sources that survived regarding the origins and formation of the 12th Legion of the Legionis Astartes are fragmentary at best, and in compiling their records, Imperial scholars were forced to rely on second-hand accounts from those who fought alongside them, and the made-up accounts handed down by those many who had cause to fear and resent this fearsome Space Marine Legion. It appears that the Terran origins of the 12th Legion show no particular bias as to the techno-barbarian tribe or city-states from which the initial influx of recruits were taken, as there was in cases of other legions. There has been some circumstantial evidence that there may have been physical screenings used to single out the most inherently aggressive and competitive recruits in an experimental pre-selection program. Whether this came to pass is merely suspicion, for it is apparent from such records that survived that the 12th Legion were from the outset deemed a highly aggressive force, its warriors hot-blooded and savage. One of its most ferocious and promising candidates, Ibrin Greer, rose quickly within the ranks of the new Legion and eventually assumed command of the 12th as its first Legion Master. During the Unification Wars, the 12th Legion's first recorded engagement was during the South Africa Liberation, where they served as a spearhead of shock troops, mounting direct annihilation assaults on enemy forces, both in open battle and fortified positions, and able to carry the attack despite their relatively small numbers by sheer courage and the fury of violence they would unleash. After its initial battles, the new Legion seemed to have been largely held in reserve by the Emperor during the latter Unification War, and right through the subsequent reconquer of the Sol System. This may have been done in case of a sudden reversal of the fortune of wars, or, as certain vile evidence implies, as a weapon to be unleashed in case of disloyalty amongst the Emperor's own. During this time, the 12th Legion was kept in a state of constant readiness, relentlessly training and steadily growing in numbers. On the occasions when it was unleashed into battle, the Legion's Astartes performed with almost gleeful savagery, tearing apart whatever enemy that they were given to fight without mercy or falter. heedless of the risk and uncaring of the Legion's own losses. It is believed that during this period, the Emperor himself dubbed the 12th Legion his warhounds as a tribute to the savage and tenacious way they fought to pacify the natural sprawl of the Cephalic hive. The Emperor chose this name because the 12th Legion reminded him of the white warhounds of the warriors of the north of Terra once used in battle. As the early decades of the Great Crusade progressed, and the first of the Primarchs were discovered across the galaxy, where they had been dispersed by the ruinous powers, the 12th Legion was broken up temporarily into a number of independent subcommands, each several thousand Space Marines strong. The largest of these, at some 8,000 warhounds, along with a dedicated assault and fleet support elements, was designated to the 13 Expeditionary Fleet, or the Bloody 13 as it became quickly known. This detachment were sent in as a mobile reserve, where the fighting was fiercest in the Great Crusade's front lines. There they served as frontline assault troops in glorious campaigns alongside the Space Wolves, Iron Warriors, and Dark Angels legions. Elsewhere, they would often provide the killing strike for large Imperial army formations in war zones where an impasse had been reached, breaking a strategic deadlock in a single furious attack, which sent an enemy reeling. The Warhounds developed a reputation for victory, although at a cost, and it was said every assault they conducted ended in only one of two ways: victorious slaughter or simple slaughter, either of which left the foe in no condition to resist further. However effective the Legion was, there were many who fought alongside them, who found them to be very unpredictable and dangerous to anything that stood in their path, combatant, civilian, or otherwise. Rumors soon began to circulate that the Warhounds would put to the sword any human auxiliary regiments of the Imperial Army they saw as failing them in battle, and they kept a guarded distance from other legions. It was noted by outsiders that the Warhounds' officers enforced an unusually harsh code of discipline in their ranks, which was indeed needed, as the Astartes of this legion often proved fractious, and bloodshed between battle brothers was far from uncommon. The 12th Legion was increasingly deemed by Imperial war councils as being more suitable for use against targets where annihilation was the goal rather than Imperial compliance or liberation, attacks to which they seemed eminently suited. The Warhounds were brought together again under the banner of the Bloody 13th, alongside a variety of units who, like the Warhounds, had gained a dark reputation for unrestrained violence rather than military discipline. They mustered on the harsh volcanic world of Bolt, which had been taken by the Warhounds as a training ground some years before. Included regiments of Feral World headhunters inducted into the Imperial Army, and brute abhumans on the edge of the Imperium's tolerated genetic deviance. To these were added units such as the Titans of the Lego Audax, around whom a pale of suspicion had fallen ever since the Lorien Alpha massacre, and the distrusted Newman gun clans, nomadic techno-barbarians who had bitterly fought against compliance for many standard years before their recent and grudging induction into the Imperium. Hand-to-hand combat was the 12th Legion's preferred form of warfare, even before it took the Emperor's given name of the Warhounds for itself. This did not mean that the Warhounds lacked the ability in rage engagements or armored warfare and supporting artillery attacks. No lesser leader in the art of mechanized warfare than the Iron Hands Primarch, Ferrus Manus, praised the Warhound's armored assault on Alabaran Septus as the epitome of ironclad rage given form. But for the Warhounds, such thing was a tactical means to an end, that end being the successful deliverance of the killing force of the Legion. The Warhounds had a preference of close combat weaponry, habitually carried by its rank and file, in addition to the use of the ubiquitous combat blades or gladius. Even legionnaires attached to reconnaissance squads and vehicle crews commonly carried chain blades, flay cutters, and monoserrated bayonets, backup knives, hatchets, and even cleavers. In the Cerberus Insurrection, the newly dubbed Warhounds were tasked alongside the Terran 22nd Draco regiments of the Imperial Army to subdue the asteroid prison colony of Cerberus, which had risen up in anarchy revolt in a state of near continuous rioting and mob violence. Initial attempts to impose order by Terran troops had been thrown back in disarray as it became apparent that among the insurrectionists was a renegade cadre of outlawed Thunder Warriors, long believed dead, calling themselves the Dight Tar. With many of the Space Marine legions already assigned to the First Expeditionary Fleet of the Great Crusade, and en route to the stars, the Emperor himself dispatched his warhounds to Cerberus, with explicit instructions to reclaim Cerberus colony and carry the Emperor's wrath to those that had defied him. Within 5 hours, a signal was received from the Praetor commander, Calbi Hax of the 12th Legion, that Cerberus Primary had been returned to Imperial compliance. When asked by the leaders of the waiting second wave how many prisoners to expect to transfer into custody, Hax replied that he had not been ordered to take any. The second wave of Imperial Army troops were tasked with the bleak task of clearing up operations in the wake of the Warhounds' assault, hunting down any survivors hiding in the warrens of tunnels and passageways, of which they proved to be precious few. There were multiple reports of more than once coming across the hulking carcass of an armored Thunder Warrior, often with 3 or 4 of his numbers in Astartes dead around him, of choked points and defense posts turned into blood-soaked carn houses, and of scores upon scores of insurgents cut down from behind while fleeing in blind panic, their weapons abandoned. Another notable campaign that saw the savagery of the Warhounds was on the world of 8217, or Nov Shandak. Nov Shandak was a world of worms, giant creatures, intelligent and hateful. Their weapons were filaments, metal feathers that they embedded in themselves to conduct the energy of their bodies. The surface would roil with the filaments before the worms broke out, almost at the Imperial defender's feet, thick as a man, longer than a person was tall. They had 3 mouths in their faces, a dozen teeth in their mouth. They spoke through the mud with sonic screams and witch whispers. Early in the Great Crusade, the Warhounds Legion had found 3 star systems under their thrall, burning them out of their colony nest and chasing them home. But on their cradled world, the 12th Legion had found humans. Humans lost to humanity for who knows how long, crawling on the land while the worms slithered in the March seas, hunting the humans, farming them, killing them. The Warhounds, alongside their fellow Astarte Legion, the Iron Warriors, and a large contingent of Imperial Army soldiers, were charged with the extermination of the worms and liberating the humans of this world. Fighting the worms was next to impossible, as the lunar tides dragged the mud oceans to and from across the jagged stone continents, making the ground very unstable. The Imperial forces had to use sentries with high-powered lasguns to read the movements of the mud to hear the worms moving through it toward them. Explosions were seeded around the earthworks and allowed to sink to wherever the worms burrowed. Perturabo had his Iron Warriors build these earthworks. They built trenches and dikes, penned in the mud seas and drained them, drove the worms back, reclaimed the land that the wretched humans could build on. And when the worms came out to fight the Imperials, they met the Emperor and his Warhounds. Though the casualties were horrendous, the Warhounds eventually emerged triumphant. The Warhounds Legion was also known for its harsh enforcement of internal discipline and the hot-blooded temper of its legionnaires. Command within the Legion was gained through a mixture of martial prowess on the battlefield and display of leadership on the front lines, with specialists singled out by aptitude early on. No rank or role within the Legion was exempt from the expectation that they would fight as hard as the rest, nor was the desire to grapple with the foe and cut them down by stroke blade discouraged if the opportunity arose, be it a Space Marine in question, an apothecary, or an artillerist rather than a frontline fighter. Compared to many of the other Astarte legions, order and discipline did not come as naturally to those of this gene seed as might be expected. Tempers often seethed. Slights, perceived or real, were met with anger, and more often than not, violence. All officers of the Legion knew they were expected to back up their authority by force if needed, and the punishment of infractors by an officer's own hand was the Legion's way. To disobey an officer's order was a death sentence to be carried out without delay. Trial by combat soon became the Legion's preferred route for settling disagreements within its ranks, and bloodletting by the warriors in open discord was an honored thing both in Angron's eye and in that of his Legion. Here also could one of the higher ranks be challenged for the right of command, although such rare contests were always to the death. And those were 40 facts about the World Eaters. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, because we're going to come out with a part 2 to the World Eaters, where we finally get to see what happens to them, or what happens to the 12th Legion once it meets its Primarch, Angron. And of course, if you're already a subscriber, please hit the little notification button right next to the subscribe button. What we're going to start doing is for every person that clicks the little notification button, we're going to actually donate a skull to the Skull Thrones on behalf of that button pressing that you did. And again, guys, comment down below if you guys have any requests for other first founding Space Marine chapters that you guys would like us to make a video for. We're tallying up all those votes, and we're bringing out the content as you guys vote for it. That's it, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.